All right. Okay. All right. So I want to use I want to use tonight's time to talk about learning goals and objectives. So the first thing I want to mention is to tell if an instructional designer is good or not, you will look at the learning goals or learning objectives that person wrote. Because all learning are guided by learning objectives. Now, you may wonder, what's the difference between learning goals and objective? Do you guys know what's the difference between learning goals and objective? Chris and Katrina, would you like to share a little bit?
I feel like the objective is what you want the audience to learn overall, but I feel like the learning goals are certain things that you want them to learn within the lesson, maybe.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, the objectives are part of the outcomes, and so they should. So that's going to be part of an outcome that you want as part of class, and the goals are other educational concepts that are they're going to be useful, but not specific to the subject that you're teaching. So they could be generals, like a goal could be like better communication, and an objective can be, that you're able to complete an outline or something like that.
Let me tell you what the difference is. What are the differences? So Caprisa, you got it backwards for learning goals and objectives. And Chris, you are somewhat right, but not 100% correct. So when you're talking about like, for example, you said better communication is a learning goal. That is very good. And objective is probably complete outline, like communication outline. So which means learning objective is one step towards that goal. So you got that part right. So let me explain what they are. Learning goal is an overarching learning objective that your learner needs to accomplish by the end of your course or your training program. Okay, so goal is like the bigger picture. Okay, the bigger picture, where you say what you want learner to learn by the end of this course or by the end of this training program. For that, learning goal must be general. You can't say a learning goal for this course is to is a specific task. Okay, so it has to be general, it has to be overarching, and the learning goal needs to be written at a higher Bloom taxonomy level. So you have read the Bloom taxonomy, which has knowledge, starting from a knowledge, application, analysis, create, and so forth. It has to be at the higher Bloom taxonomy level. And the learning goal also needs to highlight the overall purpose of the outcome, of the learning, the overall purpose of the learning. So when we say goal and objective and outcome, so those three words could be used interchangeably, especially the objectives and outcomes. So a lot of times we will use learning outcomes, a lot of times we use learning objectives. But just make sure when you put a learning goal there, it has to be at the higher level learning. Okay, so use Chris example. to be a better communicator. If that's the learning goal, how to achieve that goal. So maybe the step one is to have a communication outline. Number two could be like learn some communication skills. Number three is to some advice for a better communicator. For example, like think before you speak and so forth. So learning objectives are a series of learning outcomes or objectives to working towards that learning goal. And therefore, they're the breakdowns of the learning goal. That makes sense, okay?
Thank you for the explanation.
Okay, does that make sense to you?
The learning goals make sense, but I think I need another example of their learning objective, if you don't mind.
Another example for learning objective. Okay, so let's go back to use the better communicator as an example. How about that? So the learning goal is to help the learners to be a better communicator. That's the goal. So the learning objective, the first learning objective is to develop a communication outline. Remember we talked about have a communication outline, maybe a first step to be a better communicator, right? So when you write learning objectives, you will be to develop a personal communication outline. Now, the second learning objective could be compare and contrast different communication skills. You know, for example, to be a verbal communicator, to be an oral communicator, to be a visual communicator. So those are different communication skills.
So basically the objective helps you get to the learning goal?
Bingo.
Okay.
Yes. That's what I'm saying, that learning objectives are the breakdowns of the learning goal to help the learner to accomplish that goal.
Okay, and I had it backwards. Okay.
That's why you had it backwards. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Now, what are the characteristics of a good learning objectives or outcomes? First of all, it needs to be achievable. Like this is something to be done, right? If we say, I want to save the earth, that's not accomplishable. That's not achievable. Okay. And second, it needs to be measurable. What does that mean, measurable?
That means we have to somehow be able to quantify you getting better at it. So measurable means you need to be able to apply a grade to it or apply quality to it, and be able to provide feedback for it that allows the person to be able to do it better.
Yes, yes. Measurable is this behavior can be quantifiable or can be measured by a certain criteria. That's why we have rubric, and rubric is to measure whether your learner accomplished that outcome. And that measure can also be using, for example, if you let's use a math as an example. You have to compute using a formula, using a math formula to compute a mathematical problem at 100% accuracy. So that 100% accuracy is a measure. So which means your outcome must be able to be measured by certain criteria. And it has to be learner-centered. Learner-centered means when you write the outcomes, you have to address that from learner's perspective, not from you perspective. You are the creator, let's say you're an instruction designer, or you are the teacher. You have to write that outcome for your learner's perspective, what they need to do, what they should do. Okay. So let me give you an example. An outcome say, if the outcome say, I will teach this subject. That's not objective. That's not an outcome. That's not a good outcome. Okay. So because it's written from your perspective. So the learner-centered, you will always say, you should be able to do behavior 1, 2, 3, 4. So that your learners will have a better sense. This is something I need to accomplish, or this is something I need to achieve. And I have seen some outcomes like has like 100 words in it, like 2 or 3 lines. No, make your outcomes as simple as possible, because the more wordy your outcome or objective is, the more cognitive load you're adding to your learners. So make it simple. If you can express or share a comment in 1 sentence, do not use it in 2 sentences. I would rather see you break down, if you want break down into 2 separate outcomes instead of have a 1 long outcome. And you need to have appropriate cognitive complexity. Do you guys have any questions about that?
No, I really liked when you said if it's too long, it's better to break it into 2 outcomes than to have 1 long complex outcome. That's good feedback for me.
So the cognitive complexity should be related to your learners your learners cognitive level. For example, when you write an outcome for undergrad course versus write an outcome for a doctoral level course, the complexity, the cognitive complexity should be different. So for a undergrad course, you may want them to define, to describe, which is the lower level of Bloom taxonomy. But if you're creating a graduate course, they should be at a higher level of Bloom taxonomy. They need to be able to apply the knowledge, to be able to create something. They need to be able to analyze the complex subject. So that's what it means by cognitive complexity. Very similar. If you are preparing a course for a kid, for a K-12, okay, for elementary kids versus for high school kids, it should be different too, because the reading levels are different. So you need to take that into consideration. All right, the next, specific. So when your outcome, you need to give them a very specific instruction, what they need to do. So my focus is on the do, what they need to do. And that also goes back to simple, the simplicity of your outcome as well. Be specific and be simple. And also use active language. Avoid using passive language. in an outcome. So those are the characteristics of a good learning objectives or outcomes. Now, how to write a good learning objective. So there's ABCD model. A is stands for audience, B stands for behavior, C stands for condition, and D stands for degree. And the degree is the measurement for the outcome. So here is a video of the ABCD model. This is also the same video that I posted in the announcement. Did you guys have a chance to take a look at the video?
Yes, I watched it already. I want to say like last week, maybe the week before.
Good. Okay, so I'm not going to play that video again, and you feel free to, for those who are not here tonight, you feel free to, you should watch that video because that's very, very simple, but explain the ABCD model very well. So now here's an example of the ABCD model. As a result of watching this presentation, participants will be able to list the 4 criteria for developing measurable learning outcomes. So the audience is participants. The behavior is to list what? List the 4 criteria. And what's the condition? Condition is watching this presentation. So you will watch this presentation first, that's a condition. Then you will be able to list the 4 criteria for what? For developing measurable learning outcomes. And sometimes sometimes their outcomes will have a specific degree, for example, to what extent, like 200% or to 95% correct. So, however, that kind of a degree might not always be used. So it completely depends on the contents of the learning that you are developing. If it is, for example, it is for K-12 course that there's very clear right or wrong, and then you want to add that specific degree to your outcome. For example, if it's a math course or solving a math problem, then you need to have that degree like to 100% accuracy. Okay, any questions? Are we good to move on?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so like I said, if you have any question, feel free to like raise your hand and stop me, okay? Now, when you write outcomes, ask yourself these questions, okay? If I were the learner, do I understand what I am being asked to do? And second, are the ABCDs, the audience, behavior, condition, and degree, are those elements obvious in the learning outcomes I wrote? 3, are those outcomes clear, concise, and easy to understand? Are those outcomes centered around learners, not you, but the learners? So always ask yourself those questions after you wrote the outcomes, and ask yourself those questions. And many times you will say, oh, I missed this part. Oh, I missed that part. So you need some thinking process and need some revisions for your initial draft of outcomes. Okay, I also posted here listed here, those are the avoid using fuzzy action verbs. So what are the fuzzy action verbs? Learn, know, understand, grasp, and appreciate. So why do we call them fuzzy verbs? Let me ask you guys.
Maybe because it's like just basic. I don't really know a good word for
That's
it,
okay. That's okay. That's why you are here.
Because they're not specific enough. They're too general. And so they're not describing or explaining in enough detail.
Very good. Very good. Those action verbs are not measurable. Measurable. Remember I said earlier, the first characteristic for a good outcome is they have to be measurable. And like you said, those verbs, they're too general, they're not specific. That's why they are not measurable. So I'm positive you have seen so many courses that use we're training. Yes, they use verbs. Understand this. No, avoid use that. Do not use that. That just tell people when you use understand, it tells people that you are not a good instructional designer.
So could you tell me what would be some good action verbs? Just like some examples.
That's where you need to use Bloom taxonomy.
Okay.
Bloom taxonomy verbs. Let me pause it here. Let me go to a web, pull up Bloom taxonomy verb, and you know what are the good verbs, okay? All right. And as more and more digital learning it becomes more popular, there's even action verbs for digital learning. I'm going to share that as well. Okay. So give me a second. Let me put the screen. Okay, so here the Bloom taxonomy has revolutionized for several for many years. Now, so this is original Bloom taxonomy. It started with remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and then create. Remember, those are the level of Bloom taxonomy. So those are the verbs. Remember, for example, remember is recall facts and basic concepts. You could use define, duplicate, list, memorize, repeat, and state. Okay. And the higher it is, the verb is different. For example, at create, you do design, assemble, construct, develop, formulate, and so forth. Now, let's look at this. The original Bloom taxonomy was created in 1956, so over 70 years. And so there has a lot of improvement made. And the revised Bloom taxonomy was made in 2001. Okay, if you look at the remember level, it's like recognize, recalling. Understand level, see there's no verb listed as understand. You can use interpret, exemplify, classify, summarize, infer, comparing, or explain. Okay, does it make sense?
Yes.
So
it's
you
also
Yes.
Go ahead.
I said, yes, it does make sense. It also sounds more professional too.
Exactly. Exactly. So here is a list of words. if you search for Bloom taxonomy action verb, there are a lot of websites that will listed all the verbs. Now I want to show you another example for the digital learning. Let's see. You see, you have a Bloom taxonomy verb chart, okay? And you can see this has all the verbs for each level. So when you write the outcome, you want to decide which level of Bloom taxonomy I want my learners to accomplish. Then you can go back to this chart to choose the appropriate verb. I have this verb chart on my desk when I was instruction designer. I keep looking at this verb, which one is the best, which one is the most appropriate for what I want my learners to accomplish. Okay, hold on. What happened? Okay, so this is 126 Bloom taxonomy verbs for digital learning. You guys can see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So let's see. Still remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating level. However, when you look at the verbs, Googling, outlining, highlighting, searching, remember those are the remembering level. And when it comes to the second level, understanding level, tweeting, annotating, tagging. See, when you come to a little higher, let's say evaluating, you have a hypersizing can be used digital or not, and in the T, using blogging, podcasting, wiki building, filming. Okay, so those are the verbs for digital learning or for e-learning. That's a very good question, Katrina. Okay, now you know. All right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, let's go back to this. Okay. The next I want to show you some of my advice for writing a good measurable learning outcome. Now, number one, use one verb, your learning objective. As I mentioned earlier, simple, specific. Like for example, sometimes you will see outcomes like explain and define, right? So in that case, use explain. Do not use define. This is because define is at the remembering level, and explain is at the understanding level. It can also be used at application level. So when you use two action verbs, two Bloom taxonomy action verbs, when you use on the higher level and the lower level Bloom taxonomy verb, always use the higher level verb instead, because the higher level Bloom taxonomy already contain the lower level. For example, if I ask you to explain let's say explain the behaviorism or explain cognitive flexibility theory, if that's the outcome, right? And you have to be able to know what you already knew what is cognitive flexibility theory, then you'll be able to explain. So there's no need to define cognitive flexibility theory, then explain that theory. So this is a mistake that a lot of people make when writing the outcomes. Or objective. Again, outcome, objective are used interchangeably, but they're the same thing.
Okay, so that means if I write something to the apply level, which would be like which would be a verb like execute, that already implies that you understand and
Correct.
remember
Yes,
everything about it.
exactly. 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 Very good, Chris. Yes, that's exactly right. All right. So what about you, Katrina?
I'm just listening and following along.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So Bloom taxonomy is very, very important when you write the outcomes. Okay. So definitely always always look at the different levels of Bloom taxonomy so that you know, hey, this objective needs to be at what level, knowledge level or applied level or the create level. Then when a behavior may contain two different levels of the Bloom taxonomy, always use the higher level, like
Okay.
apply, create, those level. Okay, so I have two not so good examples here. I want you to take a look, see why they are bad and how to revise it. The first one is understand the implications of learning and motivation. So why is it bad? Guys, I'm asking you questions. Why
Yes,
is it?
I do.
I'm
Yes,
trying to
I'll
figure.
give you a few minutes to think. Yes, my apology.
I knew you were asking, but I didn't know the answer, so I didn't want to say anything.
Okay, I think I have.
Give it a try. Give it a try. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
So, understand is the second level of Bloom's technology. And so it says understand the implications, but I think implications are part of the application level, which is the third level of Bloom's taxonomy. So you're mixing two different levels. So you shouldn't have understand. You should have what are the implications of learning and motivation, and you don't have to refer to understanding.
So how would you revise it?
Um, I would revise it by telling them to differentiate the implications of learning and motivation. Not instead of understanding, just
Okay, Katrina, give it a try. It's okay. If in case you didn't get it right, think about it. Give it a try. Why is wrong? Why this one is a bad example? Something I mentioned earlier. What verbs you should avoid? Okay, I think Curtis is probably step away. Okay, great. Remember earlier, talk about the verbs we should avoid. understand is a fuzzy verb. It's not measurable. You can't measure, understand the implications of learning and motivation. But you also had a great point that implication of a learning and a motivation. Implication of a learning and a motivation. This concept is contradictory with understand. So let's see how we're going to revise that. Okay. And this outcome also does not have condition. Does not have a condition. If you look at ABCD model, right? It also does not have A audience. So does not have A audience, does not have C condition. Okay. So what you will revise is, upon completion of this course, learners will be able to apply motivation strategies in teaching, because the original outcome is not clear. So what is implication of learning and motivation? Are you talking about the implication of motivation in learning, right? So the original outcome is not written clearly either. So that's why it's a bad example. It's not clear, it's not measurable, it's not specific, and it's not actionable. Okay, let's go back, look at the second one. Oh, I have a, sorry. Okay, that's fine. Okay, explain and discuss 4 levels of emotional intelligence. This is also not a good example. Why it's not good and how you're going to revise it. Give it a try, guys. Chris, I think you unmute yourself. Okay. All right. So explain and discuss 4 levels of emotional intelligence. What did I say earlier? Use one verb in your learning outcome. No, I cannot hear you, Chris. All right, so use one verb in your learning objective. So therefore, this objective, explain and discuss. So there are 2 learning objectives. So which one we should keep, which one we should get rid of? Katrisa and Chris, feel free to say or feel free to type it in the chat.
Can you repeat the question again? You said to
get
rid of.
Yes, which verb? Because explain and discuss 4 levels of emotional intelligence. That we use 2 verbs here, right? We should only use one verb. So which action verb you should be eliminated, and which verb should be kept? Which one is a higher level Bloom taxonomy verb?
I maybe get rid of explain.
Okay, how about this? Let's go back, look at the Bloom taxonomy verbs.
Maybe I should have referred to that first.
Okay, let me find, okay. All right, let's use this. Hold on. Give me a second. Let me stop this. Okay. Okay. Let's look at explain, see if we can explain. We find explain. And what level is it? It's evaluate level. Let's look at discuss. Did you see discuss? Discover.
I don't see discuss on
I
there.
know, I did not see discuss either.
Is it possible that you could send the link to that, like to I don't know how to say taxonomy? Are you able to send that link to our email so we have that as a resource?
I will post that in the announcement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now, maybe that's not a comprehensive list because we use a lot in discuss. We use discuss a lot. Okay, right. So for this outcome, because discuss is a higher level outcome of explain. So you should be when you discuss a concept, you already be able to explain it. For example, emotional intelligence, you should be able to, you explain emotional intelligence. Yes, like the definition, right? You can explain what the definition of emotional intelligence. You can also explain what the 4 levels. Now, when you say discuss, that means not only the learner should be able to have the knowledge of emotional intelligence, but they also be able to discuss the implications or applications of emotional intelligence. That's why in this case, you'll be using discuss instead of explain, because the discuss already contains action of explain. Questions?
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, I think that's all we have. That's all I have tonight. Okay, I will stop sharing here and I'll let you guys have any questions. If not, I will post the recording to the class and I will also add the resources for the Bloom taxonomy to the class, to the announcement. So definitely make sure you watch the announcements for those resources. You said you will use interpret. Again, it depends on the behavior. Okay, so let's say interpret. When you use discuss for levels of emotional intelligence, that also implies that maybe a discussion activity will happen. While interpret for levels of emotional intelligence, there is no action there's no discussion action will happen.
Interpret would be more like just figuring out what it means, but not actually talking about it, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, exactly. So that's why when you write outcomes, you definitely will always follow the Bloom taxonomy, and then think what kind of activity you want the learners to do. Like I said, what you want the learners to do. That's the action. That's the outcome.
And is the outcome that action needs to be in the objective?
Yes. because a good objective, you can see what kind of activity will be implied in that outcome. For instance, discuss the 4 levels of emotional intelligence. That when you see that outcome, you will know there might be some discussion will have to happen, right?
Okay, but are you expecting us to have those actions in the goals too?
No, not the goals, but
The
the
subject.
objective. Remember,
Oh.
goals has to be more at overarching level, and
Okay.
objective is a more specific level. So we're talking about the specifics.
Okay.
Okay, all right. I hope the session tonight is helpful. Yeah, I think Chris is not able to. Yeah, we can't hear him. Great, and he has a great view of fluent text. I'm going to use it much more during teaching and preparation. Great, that's my goal. Okay. Okay. One last call, guys. Any questions for me here?
No questions. Thank you so much for reviewing over that.
Perfect. Okay. I will post this video, the recording of this video to the class when it's available. Okay. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.